So as we just heard about what the college kids are doing, how about us as parents or grandparents and how we teach the younger kids who are going through the school systems today and are being indoctrinated in ways that we couldn't even imagine? What I'd like to do is, by the way, to introduce myself, my name is Dave Sussman. I am a contributor over at Ricochet. Thanks. I got like 4 fans. I'm a member over at Ricochet, contributor. We have a show called Whiskey Politics. You can check that out on the internet, where we interview luminaries, newsmakers, and insiders of all political stripes, including the wonderful Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens. They're going to be coming up soon. But what I thought we could do right now is talk about the kids. And on stage, sitting with me right now, is somebody that is well-versed in what is happening in education today. Sitting with me is Michele Falcone. Michele Falcone, you may have seen her on Fox News. She's been a contributor over at the Orange County Register. She's a writer and speaker and has dedicated her life, we talk about connecting the dots, how we teach our children about economics, immigration, and democracy. And she's done that by writing books with her co-writer, a name that many of you may know, Dr. Art Laffer. Yes, the famed economist from Ronald Reagan days. And we've had on our show Michele and Dr. Art Laffer together, but what I was hoping we could do is kind of get into the weeds a little bit, Michele, and talk a little bit about what is going on with our children and learning democracy. What is happening in educational systems today, not just throughout America, but specifically today throughout California?
Sure. Thanks for having me. This is a great crowd. I'm glad you're all here, for a united purpose here in California. I'm a California resident. So I am a mom of 2 children. They are in high school at this point, but raising our children, understanding what they were learning in school. We've lived in Massachusetts, Michigan, and now California. As a parent, as an involved parent, we're pretty familiar with what they're being taught in school, what's coming home for homework. A number of years ago, I met Dr. Laffer, and we decided to write for young families and grandparents wanting to really talk about the basics of education and government with the young kids in their life, elementary school age. Specific to California, it may surprise you to know that California has economic standards, kindergarten through 12th grade, that are required to be taught in public schools. Show of hands, who's surprised? It's surprising, I think, because there's a tremendous disconnect when you get to the college age and the fight that Turning Point is moving into. You might be surprised to know that there is economic curriculum that's required to be taught and is taught in the public school system in California and almost every state, kindergarten through 12th grade. So what happened? Where's the disconnect? Why are we disconnected to our 18 plus, 18 to 30-year-olds perhaps? Why are we disconnected on common sense? Why are they not understanding how to be independent thinkers and, as it's been said earlier, just to have practical solutions? It's in the curriculum. The only thing I could offer, and Dave knows this as a parent too, we have to practice what we want our children to be proficient in. So I'm not terrific in algebra. We don't really talk about algebra outside the 1 year that it's required to be taken in high school, right? I'm not really proficient in that, but I'm proficient in economics. And so are my children, because we've made it a priority at home, and it's something we talk about all the time. So when I talk about California curriculum, or if I go to Texas and Virginia and Florida and Michigan and many other states that have economic curriculum in their schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, what I encourage parents and grandparents to do, make it a priority at home. Every day a child is making a choice. We need to bridge the gap for them and tell them that's an economic choice. Then it won't be so foreign to them once they're in college and beyond.
One of the biggest issues that I've had as a father, and I've got a 17 and a 12, both of them almost the next stage up, is that when my 12-year-old was in 4th grade a couple of years back, he would bring home homework and ask me to explain him math equations, which 30, 40 years ago, I knew really well. But today, the way that they are learning it, it feels like to me, and I don't know if I'm a conspiracy theorist, tell me to take the tinfoil hat off, but it's almost as if they don't want parents involved in the educational system. They want it now institutionally taught. Okay? It takes a village, no longer the parent. How do parents get that power back?
Well, you're absolutely right, and you have to make it a priority. You have to put yourself in there, and you have to advocate for your child. So, for example, before writing a book, I wasn't looking up curriculum. I just knew what came home, and I didn't identify with it. You have to do the research. It's very easy to find curriculum, find out what's being taught, and then participate in the process. So, for example, we lived in a district that switched all of their math curriculum when our children were in 3rd and 5th grade, critical years for math. That was actually a surprise to us. You have to involve yourself. You have to advocate for your children. I think we need to remember that we are all our children's very first teachers. And just because they're going to school, be it public, private, charter, what have you, doesn't mean that you've broken the tie to your child's education. And it's lovely if you're in a school environment that you love and trust and have great relationships with your teachers, but what is the curriculum? We have to get involved, and we can't just pick it up again at 18, especially if that's the age group where you're having disagreements about, free market and the cost of education and getting a job and these really important life choices. So I say with the math example, you have to involve yourself from an early age, and if you're not understanding it, you have to get right in there. There can be no hands off in that part of parenting. And many people choose to homeschool. Really good friends of ours have. That's the ultimate participation. I would say that even if you're not a homeschooling family, you absolutely have every right, and it's in your best interest to involve yourself in the curriculum to understand what your child's being taught. And then I always like to say, augment it with what is important to you. I believe economics is right up there with value and respect and critical thinking.
So you've got the book, Let's Talk About Economics, co-written with Dr. Art Laffer, and you can see it up here on the screen. And you also have Let's Talk About Democracy. When I was a kid, we learned about civics. We learned about the 3 branches of government. We learned how it built. Who remembers Schoolhouse Rock, right? They don't have Schoolhouse Rock anymore.
Right.
Okay? Yeah, maybe the music wasn't that great, but no, they're not learning it. So you have this book now, Let's Talk About Democracy. Let's talk about democracy. How are kids today learning about this?
Sure. Well, the really important thing when engaging with your child, your grandchild, children in the community that you're mentoring is to meet them where they are, right? Assess where they are, what they understand today. The most important way and the most impactful way to really teach a child something is to use an example that relates to their everyday life. So they don't have to imagine or conceptualize what you're saying. So what Dr. Laffer and I do in the economics book and the democracy book is we use examples that are from their everyday life, whether it's planning a family vacation. In the case of democracy, we compare democracy to communism and to other forms of government like dictatorship. We do it in a treehouse, in a community park. These kids are responsible for deciding how to run their treehouse. And it's a fantastical treehouse, by the way, and they're so excited about it, but they go through many trials and tribulations before they arrive at democracy as the best way to marry choice and freedom. So when you're reading to and working with children, meet them with an example that makes a lot of sense to them because, again, civics is still in curriculum. You'll find it there. But if we want our children to really understand democracy and appreciate the democracy we have and not elect officials who are not only leaning toward socialism and a more communistic way of running the country, but actually identify that way, they have to know what that is, and they have to know what democracy is. So give them examples that make sense to them on an everyday basis.
Last question for you. A lot of folks here have kids, maybe grandchildren. When we get the children in our cars and we're talking and we're hearing about their day, and they may hear about teachers teaching them things that we feel is just uncomfortable. How do we have that conversation with them? What do we say to them to at least pull them back to the middle?
Sure. Well, in our family, nothing is off the table. We can talk about everything, and if you've ever driven with kids, actually the car is the best place to talk about everything because you're not looking at each other. So a lot more information will come to you when there's no eye contact, by the way. Go through their day. How was your day? Specifically, what was said in class? Well, how did you respond to that? And I think when you develop that relationship, and I'm talking starting with 6-year-olds who are deciding how to spend their afternoon after school. They've got, 4 hours before basketball practice, or then they have to do homework, dinner, go to bed. You can introduce economics that way. You're making choices. So it's the same way in school. Well, what was that idea? What was your input? You're giving children a voice, and that's why we call the books Let's Chat about these topics, because it's conversational. If you establish that conversation early in life, your children are learning to respect what you're saying because you are respecting them. They're learning to have critical thinking and to use their critical voice. And they're learning that their choices have consequences because you are allowing them, the more they understand these topics, to make their own decisions. And so then when your child goes to college, for example, I have a son on an accepted college tour this weekend, I worry a little less about where he's going and what he might hear in college, regardless of what he's heard in high school. It's a free flow of ideas, and we've heard from other speakers about, political leanings on college campuses. I actually know that our son understands facts and reason, and he does not make his decisions with his emotions. He understands supply and demand in a free marketplace and the opportunity cost of doing one thing and what he gave up to do that. So I worry less about that. We're entering a new stage because we started, like you say, in the car with the early discussions of what happened at school and how they feel and think about things.
So I lied to you. This wasn't my last question. This is. We had Charlie and Candace up here, and they're focusing on the young adults, the college kids.
Yes.
You're seeing firsthand elementary, junior high, middle school. How optimistic or concerned are you about the future?
I'm extremely optimistic, and that's just not my upbringing. It's because I work in schools, predominantly with elementary school children. And I asked you earlier, where's the disconnect? We have curriculum in schools, kindergarten through 12th grade for economics, for example. If you're talking to third graders, they easily understand supply and demand, even if they can't name the term to the example you're giving them. They don't have to participate in a $1 billion financial literacy program to understand scarcity, because they have a few hours after school, they're deciding how to spend their time. I'm optimistic because when I talk to kids about economics and the difference between democracy and communism, it's completely practical and understood by them. So what I suggest is that conversation continues at home, that engagement continues, because they understand more than what I'm hearing out of college campuses.
Folks can find you. You've got your books out on Amazon.com. Let's talk about economics. Let's talk about democracy. Are you still working on the immigration one? Okay. And folks can find you where?
Sure. Let'sChatBooks.com. But Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Dr. Laffer and I just strongly believe that the future of our country depends upon economically educated children. And that's our job at home.
Well, thank you so much.